which we're going to pass over this evening. So we will hear item 1, which is the Kenter Place repaving. We will pass over item 2, the request for approval for a contract with that outside firm. That item is not ready for this evening. Item 3 we will hear, which is the legal service agreement amendments. And item 4, the monthly financial report, we will hear. So we will be hearing items 1, 3, and 4 this evening and passing over item 2. These are public hearing items, so I will invite the public to come and speak on them after we've had our presentations from the item makers and we've had our question and answer with committee members. When folks come forward, we will ask them please to give us their names and addresses for the record, and then we speak after that. The microphones are working really well tonight. Try not to move them more than you need to. Use the swing arm, but try not to move the base if you can help it. If you have a phone or pager or other noise-making device, please turn it off or put it on mute so that its ringtones will not distract us during these proceedings. If you need to have a conversation with someone, by all means do so, but take it outside so that our proceedings will not be distracted. We thank you in advance for your cooperation. Let's begin with item 1, the Kenter Place paving. Good evening. Name and address for the applicant.
Good evening, Rebecca Barbera, 122 West Rock Avenue. I'm the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer. I'm here before you today on the communication for Kenter Place. It will be the first example under the newly passed ordinance to address non-accepted streets. Kenter Place was a subdivision over 50 years ago. The street does not meet the standards for a city roadway, but it is the main access for a number of residents, both for emergency services and for their trash collection. The Alder had done a significant amount of the legwork contemplated in the ordinance prior to the passage of the ordinance, so the petition requirement had already been met. There were 2 additional properties that are impacted based on the definition that were passed. They're properties that do not have driveways on Kenter Place, but do have, through their titles, access granted over the roadway, and additionally may own a portion thereof. So those properties are included in this submission per the ordinance as passed. The roadway was reviewed by both the city engineer and the director of public works. They both concur on a recommendation for a mill and pave. I actually was present with them for a couple of their visits out there. The pricing for which was collected over the summer as part of an estimate for our annual pave, and separately. There is a significant savings for conducting this paving as part of our annual programming. Whenever you do paving, you have to pay for what's called mobilization. When you have a large scale project, that cost kind of gets sunk into the entire project, and it therefore results in a much lower rate per square foot or square yard. So the overall project was reviewed by the RAC committee. The recommendation coming out of the committee, which for those of you who recall, is established with 2 alders, the CAO, and the city engineer, with the advice of other operational departments to review our infrastructure. They recommended the project move forward as part of the annual city pave, and that 50% of such costs be applied as per the new ordinance to the impacted properties. That would be, it's estimated to cost approximately $30,000 in next year's pave, which would be split 50-50, so $15,000 would be applied over the impacted properties over the length of the bond that we issue to pay for such. So over 20 years, they would repay the $15,000, and it works out to be about $45 per property per year. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for that concise presentation. We will now have questions from members of the committee. The queue is open. Questions from committee members. Alder Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair Marchand. Good evening, Ms. Munger. How do the people pay back the money back, their portion?
So coming out of the legislation committee, the ordinance you guys passed at the October meeting, it is done as an assessment and paid as part of the tax bill. So it would be levied against the property, not an individual, and it would be paid back each year as part of your tax bill.
Follow up, please. So what if the property was sold, any of those properties was sold? How does the bill carry on? Who pays?
It follows the property.
Oh, it follows the property. So the new property owner would assume responsibility for whatever the balance may be.
Correct.
Of that bill. Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Marchand.
Thank you, Alder Hamilton. Further questions from colleagues on this item? The Kemper Place paving. Alder Morrison.
This is just a, I don't know if this is okay. This is just a follow-up to Alder Hamilton's question. In regards to the payment, I know you said that it's over the course of the loan, the bond. And so the residents will have 20 years to pay this in order, pay their portion. And if they wanted to pay earlier, like if theirs would be 15,000, right?
The total for the entire street is 15,000. It would be divided between, forgive me, I forget the number off the top of my head, but it works out to about $45 per resident per year over the course of those 20 years.
Okay. But if they wanted to just pay theirs off, say it came up to, I don't know, $5,000, and they just wanted to pay that off, is that listed in their tax bill, that like the total sum of what they need to pay, but it's $45, a year that's added on to their taxes?
I would have to get back to you on that.
You understand what I mean? This being
I
able
don't
to.
think there's any benefit to them prepaying, and I don't know how that mechanism would work, but I can review with the assessor and get back to you.
Okay. I asked that because some people, they're preparing for next steps, right? And they just want to get rid of that or, something like that. And then the other thing, in regards to the lien, I guess this is a positive lien against the property. This type of lien doesn't become a barrier to selling your home or anything like that.
No, I would make the analogy to some of the agreements that are on file for solar. So when you enter into an agreement for solar on your roof, it follows the property, not the person executing that agreement. So it basically, it's not a detriment, it's just a responsibility that transfers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder Morrison. Further questions from colleagues on this item? Further questions from colleagues? I have one, which is the language of the order says approximately 50%, which I think is prudent because the final cost of the job may not be exactly $30,000, so you want to give a little wiggle room. But also borrowing $30,000 means that after the 20 years, the city has paid more than $30,000, right? You borrow money, you have to pay interest, right? And so when the city fully pays for that $30,000, which is bundled in a much bigger capital stack, of course, the city's actually paying something more than $30,000, maybe $32,000 or whatever. And so was that part of your conversation in terms of the recommendation for what 50%, approximately 50% would be?
It was not part of the conversation. Also, just to note, this year we do have a general fund allocation to supplement paving sidewalks and trees. That was allocated by this board as part of the budget deliberations. So it could come from that pot of money, which would be general fund. Because we traditionally use borrowing, that's why the 20-year repayment period was established.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. Further questions from colleagues? Alder Furlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a clarification, it was agreed through RAC that if it went over 30,000, then the city will make up the difference.
Correct, and that's how it was communicated, at 50% up to the cap of 15,000.
And this is for the, so I should be sitting there so I can help explain. And this is so that the residents will be able to have a fixed amount in the beginning and not have to worry about an amount increasing because of costs going up. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking, but that's what I heard.
I think it's relevant because the ultimate cost of the project is not definitely known. You could estimate it at 30,000, but it might be 29,862. It might be 31,845. Those are just numbers I pulled out of my hat, by the way. But whatever those numbers are, it'll end up being a little bit more that the city pays, because if it's capital money, then there's interest that you pay on capital money. If it's general fund dollar, but I don't know that we would need to say, well, you must use general fund money for this, because it is not $15 million. It is in the end $15,000. So. But it's just something I wanted to understand if that was part of your deliberations around the recommendation. Further questions from colleagues on this item? Seeing none, we thank you for your concise presentation, and we'll see if there's a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item. Please come forward. Alder. Name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, colleagues. Amy Marks, Alder for Ward 26. I'll keep it brief. I think Ms. Mombero's presentation was clear and concise. I think I just mostly want to share two thoughts. One is a expression of sincere appreciation to the city, to leadership, to Majority Leader Furlow for helping craft a solution to a difficult situation. So it's taken a lot of hard work to get here. I've been working on this. It was the first constituent request that was made of me upon Darryl Brackeen's departure. So it's been a long time coming. You know, there's a street that had been paved by the city for a long time, always been paved, desperately needs paving. And both myself and residents understand that rules matter, and that it matters that it's an unaccepted street. We do things fairly. So we had a challenge. And I want to thank everybody who's been involved, Corporation Council, RAT, Majority Leader Furlow. A deep debt of gratitude to our neighbor, David Halbram, who we'll hear from shortly, who coordinated amongst neighbors. The reality is it needs to be paved. The residents were willing to incur some of the cost, and it's not possible, particularly in a situation like this, for the residents to coordinate amongst themselves and make sure that everybody participates. So this is really a worthwhile mechanism. Just to be clear, I don't think you're going to see this situation a lot. There are a number of unaccepted streets. I think it's over 30, but this is really kind of a quasi street. It's a street that has more than 14 households on it. It's a street that has 4 households that use Kenter as their address. There's a street sign that says Kenter. Most of us didn't know it wasn't a street. So I really appreciate the solution to this. Just in addition to the expression of gratitude, I just want to share the extent to which I think all of the neighbors are in support. Mr. Halbram did circulate a petition, which was signed by almost everybody. I have been in email coordination with more than the vast number of the neighbors. I don't have them for everybody, but notified everybody about the meeting tonight. You all will see that 2 letters of support were provided by a resident named Susan Clemens and a resident named Bill Carbone. So those were provided, and again, I have, in the course of this, received only appreciation to the city and to the alders for assisting with this situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you for. Alder for Santana.
A comment. We did something similar in my area, and it took a long time to get it done. We did 50-50. It works out wonderful, it goes to the property. So that was done maybe 10 or 15 years ago. But that's one way to do an accepted street, an unaccepted street for city services. Otherwise, they don't get it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder for Santana. Any questions from colleagues? Seeing none, thank you, Alder Marks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there another member of the public who wishes to testify on this item? Please come forward, sir. Good evening.
How are y'all?
Fine, thank you. Name and address.
David Heilbronn. I live at 66 Vista Terrace.
The floor is yours.
Great. My brief remarks can be the most brief because the deputy CAO and Alder Marks did a great job explaining that I live on Vista Terrace. My house backs out to Kendra Place. Our driveway access from there, and I've been coordinating amongst the, I think it's 19-ish residents that are affected by this. We're deeply appreciative of the process that has gotten us to this place to give us a resolution because it is desperately needed for some resolution for Kendra Place. I also have conversations with my neighbors, and they're all very supportive of this effort to get Kendra paved as well too. It seems fair. That's what we've been looking for, something that allows fairness and gets us in a street that is effectively a street, something quasi like being accepted street. So thank you all.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions from colleagues? I have one, which is Alder Marks characterized it as nearly everybody or almost everybody. You characterized it as I've been coordinating with everybody, and then you said 19. So I'm just curious to know, is it possible that there's one or more property owner in that list who doesn't agree or doesn't know that they're soon going to be paying $45 more per year for this?
We've tried to outreach to everyone. I've tried to knock on every door of everyone that I know to be affected. That includes folks who very clearly have frontage. We found out recently that some people are registered voters on Kendra Place, which is fascinating. And everyone who has services provided by on Kendra Place as well too. There are some folks who haven't responded to that. So there are some folks who have tried to be notified, but I have not heard from them. But I know between myself, Alder Marks, and the city, has been a lot of outreach efforts, so I can't speak to what everyone else has done as well too.
Okay. So it's possible that there might be a few folks who find out about this because they look at their tax bill next year and they say, well, that's $45 more than I thought
It's
it would be.
possible.
Although $45 is maybe not
I'd
huge.
say it's possible. My neighbor who I've talked about 10 times also has a realization too. So
Okay. Great. Further questions from colleagues? Alder Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just have a question. Deputy CEO said that we do the trash collection. Will we still be doing the snow removal? Can we address that?
I believe the answer we had that question in the legislation meeting, and the city is currently providing service to that area and will continue to do that.
Thank you.
Further questions from colleagues? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Is there anybody from the public who wishes to testify on this item? Anyone from the public wishing to testify on this item? And for a third time, is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item? Seeing no one coming forward or giving an indication of that, we'll move on to our next item. I want to remind everybody that we are passing over item 2. So now we'll turn our attention to item number 3, an amendment to several legal service agreements with various law firms. That is next, and we look forward to hearing from our corporation counsel.
Good evening. Names and addresses for the record.
Good evening. Patricia King, 32 Vista Terrace, Corporation Counsel.
Good evening, Robert Williams, 20 West Live Drive, North Haven, Connecticut, Deputy Corporation Counsel.
All right. This is an amendment that was requested by our office in order to increase the funds available for outside counsel fees. I know I've been here before in previous years on the same subject. So a lot of this will be, unfortunately, nothing new, and it may come up again next year. We are looking, there's a list of, I think, 7 or 8 law firms we're looking to increase the contracts for. And the main driver of this request for increased funds is the 7 wrongful conviction cases that are currently pending in federal court against the city of New Haven. These cases were filed as a result of arrests and/or investigations that took place in the 1990s. Many of them were only recently filed in the last several years. Unfortunately, at that time, the city had no insurance coverage for these types of matters. And the other issue that arises in these cases that drives the need for multiple attorneys is that the plaintiffs routinely sue every investigator or detective who was involved in these cases. And oftentimes that requires the city to provide individual counsel to each of these individual defendants to avoid a conflict of interest. So which we're legally required or professionally required by the rules of ethics to do. We can't have one attorney represent two former detectives who might want to point the finger at each other regarding certain things. So they each have to have their own lawyer, which requires us to have 5 or 6 lawyers depending on the number of defendants in these cases for each case. We do try to assign multiple clients to one attorney if we have a situation where there's no conflict of interest. So it doesn't automatically mean that every defendant gets their own lawyer. But we do need more than one attorney on all these cases for the reason I just explained. And for that reason, even if we had multiple attorneys in-house who could do this work, we would only be able to have one attorney from our office represent one defendant because you have to avoid, it's still a conflict if there are 2 lawyers in the same firm representing 2 different defendants. So we still would not be able to, do this without having multiple counsel. We have these cases, 2 of these cases are scheduled for trial in March and April in federal court. So we have 2 of these cases that are going to be very, very labor intensive in the next upcoming months. And many of these firms are relatively small firms, and if they're going to be devoting a lot of their resources to working on these matters, the trial preparation, which in federal court is extensive, and the actual trials, which could last a month. We wanted to get this amendment moving so that if it's approved, the funds would be available so that the firms would be able to start billing and be able to get paid for the work that they do, because they will be devoting a lot of their resources to this intensive work. So that's why we're here probably a little early than maybe normal. But we'd like to get this rolling so that we have funds available to pay as the work is done. The schedule was a little bit of a surprise, but at least 2 of these, as I said, will go forward during this fiscal year. And then the others may, at least 2 or more of the others could go forward in the next fiscal year. So we have, in the meantime, spoken to the Office of Budget and Management in the process of preparing next year's budget to try to be more realistic about what the needs might be for next year. So and the other issue is that these cases, we don't have insurance, and the settlement demands in these cases have been high. We have not, without divulging too much regarding the specific cases, I am not optimistic that we might be able to agree to a reasonable settlement at this point. So we have to go forward with preparing for trial. And if we didn't do that, we certainly wouldn't have any leverage in settlement negotiations anyway. So it's certainly worth the money to defend these cases. We really don't, I think, have a choice. So that's where we are. We did reach out to the firms and ask them to give us their best estimate of the funds that they would need to get us through this fiscal year. And these were the totals that we were told. So we did make an effort to hopefully not have to come back again before July 1. We can never predict what's going to happen with regard to lawsuits, but we did make an effort to try to get everybody to give us their best estimate for the rest of the fiscal year. So With that, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. We'll now have questions from colleagues on this item. Questions from colleagues. Alder Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair Marchand. Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, sir. 1,435,000. Now, there are 8 law firms here. Now, do you expect that this money is gonna cover these 8 law firms for the rest of the year, and all their doings representing the city?
That's what we asked them to do, provide us with that information. So, yes.
Yeah. Now, there are other, if to my knowledge, other law firms that represent the city of New Haven in other cases, names that are not here, and they're paid separately on different accounts, separate from this money, ma'am?
Yes. We have an outside counsel budget for which funds are encumbered for individual law firms. But these law firms that are listed here are the firms that are defending the defendants in these cases. And these are the cases that we expect to be active, very active, during this fiscal year.
Seems like a milking cow that's never ever stopped milking.
Well,
Sorry.
yeah, no,
Analogy, but yeah, it is very expensive.
it's very
Are there
frustrating.
no inside attorneys can represent us in anything where everything does not come out of our budget going to another law firm and another law firm for these services?
We have several attorneys now who have federal court experience, who are able to represent the city in federal court. These cases require a particular expertise in defense of this type of work, and these are the attorneys who do this work all the time, and I think they're experts. Money well spent for us for the expertise. We have been able to use our in-house attorneys for other federal court matters. Now, obviously, we're not talking about here, or we're not asking for money for because they're salaried employees.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Alder Hamilton. Before we move on the queue, I'll just acknowledge that, $1.4 million is a significant amount of money. And I understand the colleagues might express concern, but I've asked them to keep their comments within certain bounds of protocol. Alder Farrell is next on the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. You mentioned about insurance not being covered during the time. Could you just explain a bit more what that means, or what effect that would have on the city should we're the defendant, right? They're the plaintiff?
We're the defendants, yes.
Should the plaintiffs prevail?
Well, then the city would be obligated to pay out of its own funds, whether it bonds for the money or however it gets the money. The city would be obligated to pay whatever judgment is awarded to the plaintiff.
Without any insurance assisting?
I'm sorry?
Without insurance?
Without insurance, exactly. I mean, we did have some insurance, as you may recall, in the Randy Cox case that is now disposed of, and that a large percentage of that settlement, 2/3, I want to say, if I remember correctly. But during these years that these investigations and arrests occurred, the city had no liability insurance at all. So we have no coverage at this point for these cases. We now have insurance, so we have coverage for current matters. But for these old cases that are 30 years old, we don't at this time have coverage. And I share Alder Hamilton's frustration because these are very expensive cases for the city to defend. I completely understand. But there's nothing we can do to stop lawsuits. People have rights to make their claims. The claims need to be heard in court. That's the process that we have. We have to provide separate lawyers. We're statutorily required to defend the lawyers, so I don't know of any other way around it. Believe me, if I did, I would try to do it.
Thank you. Very helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Furlow. Other questions from colleagues on this item? Questions from colleagues on this item? Seeing none, I'm just gonna make a quick comment. First of all, I like the resolution for the most part. And I added up all the numbers, and they add up, and they jive with the numbers in the transfer document, and they jive with the numbers in the cover letter, so that's very good. I'm not super thrilled with the effective clause, because if you read it, it has two sections, right? So the first part of it would apply to each section. So the first, it says, now therefore be it ordained by the New Haven Board of Alders that, section 1, transfer number 133-26-1 be approved to transfer $1.435 million to the Office of Corporation Counsel Legal Service Account. That's good, because section 1, when you couple it with the sentence before it, or the sentence fragment before it, is a complete sentence that makes sense. Section 2, on the other hand, is not grammatically very good. Now therefore be it ordained by the New Haven Board of Alders that to amend this, blah-de-dee-blah, you know what I mean? So I'm gonna recommend in our deliberations that we improve that wording. And I'm gonna suggest what it might be, and I want your opinion on it.
Okay.
Okay? So section 2 would say, because you start with now therefore be it ordained by the New Haven Board of Alders that, colon. Section 2 would then read, the legal services agreements for fiscal year 2025-2026 between the City of New Haven and various outside law firms shall be amended to increase the maximum allowed expenditures of, colon, Howard and Ludorf from 149,000 to 644,000. Karsten Thalberg from 149. So that's what I think we ought to do, so that the language is actually, they're complete sentences, there's a subject and verb and a direct object, it's clear what we're doing. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. And is that the good wording, maximum allowed expenditures of these firms from one amount to another amount? Right, because you're amending the agreement to increase the maximum allowed expenditure, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, I think, yes, without, I'm the type, I have to write it all down and then
Yes.
look at it, but yes, I think basically that would be correct.
All right, so that's my only question, was tweaking the language. And I wanted your opinion on it first. Questions from colleagues on this item? Seeing none, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone from the public who wishes to testify on this item? Anyone from the large public here gathered who wishes to testify on this item? And for a third time, anyone here from the public wishing to testify on this item? Seeing none, we'll move to the final item in our agenda, which is the monthly financial report for October 2025. I see our director of OMBG is coming forward. And you have papers you wish to distribute.
Yes.
Let's do that first as you are introducing yourself. You can just hand the whole stack.
Yep.
Or you can go both directions. Thank you very much.
Shannon McHugh, Budget Director, 395 Roanoke Road, Waterbury, Connecticut.
Thank you. And let's just make sure everybody has the deck, and then you'll be all set to go. Thank you, Alder Hamilton. Just put the extras over there. Please.
Okay. So as the year goes on, we get a better picture. And as of October, we're seeing a little bit of spending pressure and a variety of items, and I'll go through those. The first one, actually, as you can see, general fund, we're showing a negative $4.5 million estimated at this time. And then litigation fund, we're basically expecting that to be balanced at this point in time. We don't have any information that tells us otherwise. Same with workers' comp. The medical fund, it's looking like a 3.4, but there's always a timing shift there where we pay claims faster than we receive certain contributions for healthcare. So that one's a little bit more of a moving target, but it's something we're keeping our eye on, because if you looked at the medical claims this year versus last year, they're a little bit, you know, it's a faster pace. Not tremendously, but enough that we're keeping a close eye on it. And then if we turn to the next page, page 2, you know, it starts to break out where we're seeing some of the pressure. So the first item that you can see under net change, you'll see in negative $2.5 million under the finance department. And that's mainly IT. There's a lot of demand for IT services and software. A lot of the departments know that the software is out there, that there's solutions that can make life easier, and we're transitioning from one to another. The controller has been in front of the Board of Alders for various solutions, ADP for payroll and Concur for invoicing. And so some of those new subscriptions and others are pushing that number up. We think that's a realistic number, that they really will be over budget by 2.5, but I think over time we'll retire some software as we get better software. So we'll have to pay, that'll be an important discussion we have with IT when we get into our next year's budget discussions. The next one, debt service, we expect a little bit of a deficit there because of financing costs for the GANs primarily. And then the self-insurance, which we just spoke about, how the city did not have some of this insurance in the past. We now have it, but the price went up a little bit this year. And we believe, well, we know this is a current number. This number's actual. It's not projection. It'll be about $1.8 million over budget. And then there is, we're seeing a little bit of a slowdown in investment income. At this point, the property taxes are doing well. We're capturing some delinquent taxes this year, so that's helpful. In this monthly report, I did put a narrative. It just summarizes a lot of what I'm saying here. I think it's helpful to have a summary. It's something that I thought would add some value to the report, so I did add a narrative there, which kind of talks about some of the pressures and some of the mitigants. And, you know, I'll point out that while we're seeing that overage in the expenditure side, there are some mitigants. You know, for instance, we do have the $1.4 million expenditure reserve, which we haven't tapped. It's you know, an appropriation that's available should it be needed throughout the year. We also have a $1.7 million labor reserve, which is set aside for any labor contract settlements. I'm not sure that that would cover all of it, but it's a set aside, so we do have some funds available for that. And then again, on this, you know, the state, we did get that extra $3 million of state aid, which we did assign to fund balance. But if we do see pressure out here, that those funds are actually set aside to cover any overages on the Board of Education. Speaking of the Board of Education, in the report, they did have projections. They were not included in the general fund numbers here because it's a little bit too early to tell. They were showing they were showing some overages in transportation and tuition. I had conversations with them. They don't think, I believe tuition was showing $8 million and transportation was showing it was would be over budget by $4 million. They do not believe that's real. They're going to give us a much better number next month. And the reason for that is, and I just want to explain because it is in the monthly report in case you look at it, that there's revenues that will come in that will offset those. So what we're seeing right now is the expenditures and all of the encumbrances because they've encumbered everything for the year. But they have not received any of the reimbursement they get for those items. So it won't be nearly as high as what was in the full monthly report. And so I didn't include it here because I don't believe that's a really solid projection at this point. But if you did, look at the entire report, you would see those numbers and they might be shocking, which is why we had that call to the Board of Ed. And they're like, those numbers aren't a real projection right now. We just put everything in and now we're waiting for the reimbursements and that would offset that number. So one thing that I did want to point out, if, on page 4 again, is under the mitigants, and this is, at the time this was proposed, but now this is in place. We put a hiring freeze in place. We have essentially frozen all of the discretionary available funds, and that means anything, not personnel, like the salaries have to get paid, we're not even thinking about that. But we are, have a partial hiring freeze in, more like we're scrutinizing all the hires at this point. Some hires make sense and help the operation, and we don't want to get in the way of that, things for public safety or revenue generating positions. So we're just scrutinizing any requests for new positions at this point. And then we basically, anything that wasn't personnel, we've literally froze it, like they have to ask to spend it. It doesn't get in the way of the contracts that are in place that have been encumbered. Those were already encumbered, those were planned spending. It's anything that was left over, which, I don't have the number in front of me, but it's a pretty solid number. I'm sorry, I can't remember right now, but there's also, we're not touching the salary lines. We do anticipate salary savings because in scrutinizing hiring, we do know that there's a lot of departments and their salary lines that are running under budget. We track that really regularly, and we can see that there would be some surpluses in some of those lines. And with the hiring freeze in place, those would remain, and then we could cover some of these overages with those salary savings. And the thing I'd like to point out is most of what's driving the projected deficit this time are not the departments, except with the exception of IT, which is a unique situation. But it's self-insurance, it's medical insurance, it's those things that are harder to control, that we have less control over. So what we're gonna do is, just tighten our belts on everything we do have control over to make sure that we can balance this out by the end of the year. And that is my presentation.
Thank you for that presentation. We appreciate the time. Questions from colleagues about the monthly financial report for October? Alder Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to go over when you mentioned about medical benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Do we get a reimbursement from prescriptions?
We do get some, yes.
And what would that look like?
I can grab my computer right now. It's in the 10 million, tens of millions.
And where did that money goes back to general fund or?
Oh, no, it all stays within the medical fund. That's why it's hard to project, because you'll see the claims have to get paid. They get paid automatically. Like it just happens even without, we don't cut checks. It's just this direct payment. So you see those happen, and you see them happen in real time, but the revenues are not in real time. So we do get money for prescriptions. We get, employee contributions. There's some general fund contributions. So all those revenues, there's usually a lag, because I remember last year when I first started, I was looking at it at one point and I was like, why is there a $38 million deficit? I almost had a heart attack, start calling around like, what's going on? And they're like, hold on, we didn't book all the revenue. The revenue's about to get booked. So they do it much more, pretty regularly, because they don't want to get those calls. Like, what's going on? It's just a delay. And that's what the Board of Education was saying about the tuition and the transportation as well. They're like, there's a lag. We get money. It's just not in there yet. So it's still a little early to get a real sense on the medical fund, how it's going to shake out. But I did, when you look at the trend month over month, it's running a little high. It ran high last year. We had a lot of high claims, high cost claims. So it looks like this year will be kind of similar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Smith. Further questions from colleagues? Alder Froh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. You mentioned savings from salaries.
Mm-hmm.
Is that due to vacancies?
Yes.
And now there's a current freeze.
Right.
Is there any projection on how long this freeze will last?
It's not 100%. Like we still have what we call escapes me right now, tracking committee, where we look at all the positions that are open. You know, there's some that the tests have been taken, and I mean, it's not fair to people if they've come and they've taken the test to shut those down. So everything that was sort of in progress that made sense, we kept moving forward, like police officers and revenue generating positions. But then from here, look, especially, you know, moving forward, any new positions that we hire for, really, they either have to, you know, be public safety, be revenue generating, or really important to an operation. And so we meet the tracking committee, which is the CAO, HR, myself, the controller, to determine, you know, if we hold back on this hiring, will there be any operational impacts or any revenue impacts or anything like that? So we're really scrutinizing. And we're going to try to be as tight as we can, but we're also being reasonable. I mean, the city needs to run and we need to provide services. But it's that extra level of scrutiny.
And maybe you're not able to say here, but I'm just wondering what is the city preparing for? Or what is it that, what is the goal, savings that you're trying to reach before the freezing will?
It's to cover these overages, essentially. To a certain extent, I mean, and it's also all the discretionary spending, like all the contractual spending. You know, most of the big POs and contracts have already been put in place, those things that we really need to do. But then there's available balances left. And what we're trying to do is preserve those available balances and only use them for, you know, activities that provide value.
I appreciate the discretion.
Yeah.
In spending. My final question, and this may not be for you, it may be for the tax assessor, the tax collector.
Mm-hmm.
Wondering, have we restarted booting and towing? Because you mentioned that the tax revenue is about where you projected it to be.
Mm-hmm. I don't believe we have started. I can follow up on that. I do have a meeting coming up with parking and transportation, because we wanted to find out how the revenue, you know, make sure the revenue is on point. You know, we're not freezing there any hiring. We need those people out on the streets to do these things. I do not believe that we're moving right now.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that'll be good information. We had said a couple of years ago, or during COVID, whenever that was, that when they were to resume, they were to come back to this committee and let us know the companies that they will be using and what that cost would be. So it might be good to get that information through you, Mr. Chair.
So noted.
Thank you. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Further questions from colleagues about the monthly financial report from October of this year? Further questions from colleagues? Just a quick clarification question, I think, and I appreciate your answers to Alder for those questions around this hiring freeze, or it's a partial hiring freeze. When you talk about new positions, you're really talking about budgeted positions that are vacant for which you might put up new postings.
Right.
But they're not new in that they've been budgeted.
Right.
Right. Okay. I just want to make sure.
They're currently vacant and we're not going to actively pursue.
Yeah, because the budget might have a lot of vacant positions, but HR has some, you know, makes a decision about which ones to post first and which ones to post next and which one. Okay. Just want to make sure I was clear about new positions.
Right.
Okay. And so it's a higher level scrutiny where it's tougher for department heads to get approval for vacant positions to be posted. Right. They posted, I was hoping that would be posted last month. Well, no, you're gonna have to wait because we're in this period where we have to address these deficits.
Right.
Okay. That's helpful. Further questions from colleagues on this monthly financial report? Alder Farrar Santana.
I have a question. I know before we're moving funds from fund balances to fund other things. Do those positions, do those staff, do those transfers include salary positions that are there? Is that why there's money left over, or that we're using to transfer the money?
Oh, are you
Yeah.
talking about corporate counsel?
Yeah.
Yes. I did, I reached out to departments and skimmed a little bit from a lot of departments.
Okay.
Not to be burdensome, and it was before before we started freezing it, but It's when we did an analysis and we're like, we know these positions are empty. We know they've been empty. We know the value of those positions.
Okay, so that's basically where the money, I thought that was it, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
So basically, those positions wouldn't be open for the next foreseeable future.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, that's why you don't see, I didn't put a deficit under corporate counsel because we handled it back, we're handling it through the transfer.
Okay,
But I do believe that most of the departments will be within budget regardless of that.
Okay.
The thing is, and we need to generate some savings because most of the departments, like last year, they operated within their budget. Like there were not a lot of overages. Again, there was a smaller one in IT last year. And so they haven't been over budget. That's not where the pressure lies. The pressure lies in these other things that we can't control as much. But we need to find the savings somewhere without, really hurting the operation. So that's our goal, is to be as fair-minded and as analytical as possible, and not just be like, straight, no, you can't hire.
my next question, follow up on that, is this unusual to do it so soon in?
I'm told that it used to be done a lot sooner over in prior years. That
I don't know, I haven't been on the finance committee before, so that's why I'm asking the question. Because the fiscal year ends in June.
yes, with 6 months or so.
Yeah, so I was just curious as to why we're doing it now.
Oh, I think if you wait too long, you won't have those savings. You won't know. You won't have that. Right now, you can see what's there, what hasn't been spent, and if you just keep letting it roll, by the time you get to trying to balance this all out, you might not have enough time to capture enough savings. But we're looking for, we're looking for efficiencies as well. Like a lot of the IT spending, the overage this year is supposed to help us next year. Especially like we're replacing some things, and then those things will roll off, and then the new software, everything's, has AI as part of it, that just makes it more efficient and more easy to use and more user-friendly. So I think that over time, like even with that, deficit in IT, I think that, kind of funding it now so that we can have more efficiencies later. So it's not all for, it's, so terrible they have an overage. It's just trying to, adjust for it. Because I think we could be better off in some of this operationally.
Can I ask another follow-up question?
Please.
How many positions are you eliminated for the total transfer? Just out of curiosity.
The vacancy report there is quite a few. And it's just, again, just trying to generate those savings, and if it has an operational impact, we're going to move forward with those positions. So we're being very, analytical about the whole thing, and not just being like, no, you can't hire. It's like, oh, well, what will that do for the city? Like parking and buildings. Buildings, the revenue is doing quite well, but they still have to do all this work and inspecting. And so obviously we wouldn't want to, limit their spending, because then we couldn't keep all that revenue generation, those sorts of things. And then public safety, obviously, is really important.
Thank you.
Sure.
All set?
Mr. Chair, yes.
Thank you, Alder Ferraris. And further questions from colleagues on the monthly financial report? Seeing none, we thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item? Anyone from the public wishing to testify on the monthly financial report for October 2025? And for a third time, anyone wishing to testify on that or any other item we've heard this evening? Seeing none, the motion would be appropriate. Alder DeColo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we close the public portion of this meeting.
Second.
Motion to close the public portion has been made and seconded. Any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The public portion is closed. Alder DeColo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move item 1 favorable.
Second.
Item 1 has been moved and seconded with a favorable recommendation. This is the Kenter Place street paving cost sharing arrangement. Discussion of this motion. Alder Morrison and then Alder Ferraro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in support of this, this motion, as we do have these streets that, obviously, that just aren't on the good list, I should say. And so by changing our ordinance and being able to support the entire city, I think is a really good thing. And the fact that this arrangement for it to be a 50-50 split, it shows that everyone has skin in the game when it comes to, you know, taking care of these like side streets in different areas. And so I am in support of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Morrison. Alder Ferraro Santana.
I am also in favor of it because I know that it's a hard to swallow for some residents to come up with. I know it's only $45. However, when you do a 50-50 split between the city and you have a stake in the game. So you want to make sure that, I believe that this is a good way to get these streets taken care of by doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. Also, I'm in support of the item as well. It helps the residents and a cooperative partnership. Good to go. Everybody happy? Yes. Let's make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Hamilton. Further comments from any further discussion from colleagues? Seeing none, all in favor of a favorable recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. It will move forward with a favorable recommendation. Alder DeColo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move item 3 favorable.
Second.
Item 3 has been moved and seconded as a favorable recommendation. Discussion. Alder DeColo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in favor of this Corp Council getting ahead of what we're dealing with, these lawsuits from the 90s, and seeing that 2 are going to be most likely happening in April and May, that they're getting ahead of the curve. And they did check with the lawyer firms and see what they're projecting. So I think this is a good move by Corp Council. I'm in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder DeColo. Alder Walker-Myers and then Alder Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe we've been hearing from Corporation Counsel that this was gonna happen, right? They've been telling us and forewarning us. And being a part of the litigation settlement committee, they're actually trying to do everything they can to make sure that we get ahead of this, because we have to live in a reality that back 30 years ago, a lot of things was taking place and we're gonna pay for it now. No, we are. And I think that it's important that we give them the tools necessary so that, like Attorney King said, it will give us some leverage to be able to negotiate maybe and be in a stronger place, because a lot of these cases don't come out that favorable for the city. And we end up spending millions of dollars on one case. And we know, they told us the last time or a couple of times ago, because they always telling us how many more cases like that potentially right now we have in a pipeline. So I think it's important to be proactive. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Walker-Myers. Alder Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in favor of this. I believe that Corp Counsel did their due diligence to find those that were capable of handling such high-profile cases of these that are about to take place. And everyone cannot do these cases, so they need professionals to handle the right cases so that they can put their best foot forward in trying to at least win something. As President Walker-Myers just said, these are difficult cases, and they need to be handled by the right people. So I'm totally in favor of this amendment here.
Thank you, Alder Smith. Further comments and further discussion from colleagues? I'm going to move an amendment to make language changes to the effective clause. My motion has been made and seconded. This is what it is. You may have heard me say it before, but if you look at the resolution, the effective clause says, now therefore be it ordained by the New Haven Board of Alders that there's a section 1, which I am not changing. There's a section 2, which will have a sentence preceding the list, and that sentence will read, "The legal services agreements for fiscal year 2025-26 between the City of New Haven and various outside law firms shall be amended to increase the maximum allowed expenditures of, colon." And then all the list below, I'll remove the word amend, and I'll remove the word agreement. So that the first one, for example, would read, to Howard and Ludorf from $149,000 to $644,000. And so if you read that with the sentence above it, it's a complete sentence, and it reads, "The legal services agreement for this fiscal year between the city and these firms shall be amended to increase the maximum allowed expenditure of Howard and Ludorf from $149,000 to $644,000, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, down the list." Your colleagues. So that's my motion, my amendment. Discussion on the amendment. To clarify the language, Alder Morrison.
I agree with this amendment. It makes it very clear in regards to what we're doing. Having it like that just gives a laundry list of who and what versus a whole lot of other words. So I definitely agree with your amendment.
Thank you, Alder Morrison. Further discussion, Alder Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. I agree also, because seeing the funds, the increase from this amount to that amount per law firm gives us a baseline to see where this money is going and who is, being paid. So I agree.
Thank you, Alder Hamilton. Further discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The amendment passes. Further discussion on this item as amended. Further discussion of this item as amended. Seeing none, all in favor of the item as amended, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. It will move forward favorably. Alder DeCola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move item 4 as a read and file.
Second.
Item 4 has been read as a read and file and seconded. Discussion of the motion. Discussion of this motion. Seeing none, all in favor of this motion, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. It will move forward as a read and file to the full board. And before a motion to adjourn is appropriate, let me just thank everyone on this committee, all of my colleagues on their very hard work this calendar year. This is the last meeting of the Finance only committee for 2025, and it's been another great year, lots of work, including the budget. And I thank colleagues for their diligence and attention and participation in these meetings. But it is not the last meeting of the year. There will be a joint education finance meeting on Thursday this week. We'll do a workshop looking more closely at the Board of Education budget. The budget for the New Haven Public Schools will be joined by Dr. Necron and members of her team. And I look forward to seeing folks back in these chambers on Thursday for that riveting discussion. Now, Alder DeCola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been made to adjourn and seconded. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The motion carries. We are adjourned.